Welcome to serbestiye.com. I'm Khashax Atai'nin. So the questions I read like one after the other and I give you the answers, right? That's how it works. As an English teacher living in Canada, you have built a life in a completely different culture. Could you tell us about your journey? What was the primary reason you let you leave Iran and seek a future in the West? That's actually a very long story. If I want to, I have to make it very short. To keep the story short, the plan was to go to the States to study a course on like international affairs and on my. I should take it off. It's better. Yeah, it was. I was supposed to go to the States to study in DC, and then the visa didn't come. Then I applied again, the visa didn't come, so I decided to go to Canada instead and wait for the visa until it arrives. Because the first time I got rejected, I went to Oman. The second time I got there, I somehow solved the issue. They were like, you're on the administrative processing, which means that you would have to wait between 2-3 weeks until 2-3 months, maximum 6 months, until they give you the visa. So it was already 5-6 months that I was waiting for the visa. I was in contact with the embassy. They said, no, it's going to be issued so soon, like in 2-3 months. I said, okay, I go to Toronto first. I wait for 2-3 months and then I will fly to DC from Toronto. That was the plan. I went to Toronto. Trump got into power. He started to abolish the entire visa system in its entirety. So I couldn't get to the States and I had to make decision either to go back to Iran immediately or stay longer in Canada. So there was a plan for the Iranians that it was called the Iranian program, which meant that, you would apply for work permit to stay there longer for like 2-3 months, for 2-3 years or something like that. For 3 years, they give you a work permit to work there, to stay there and work there. So I started looking for jobs, and I had been a teacher for a long time before I changed my job many times. Well, I hadn't taught for like the last 10 years. So I started applying for schools again, going here and there, asking for jobs. So I found a job as an English teacher. And then I started going to English classes after like 10 years, almost 10 years being away from English classes. What an amazing experience. About the journey, of course, I love Toronto. It grew in me. People are very interesting. Like when you first arrive in Toronto, it's not like, it doesn't impress you much. The city doesn't like impress you much compared to the European countries where you go like all this architecture and those beauty and all those elegance and everything. But it is beautiful in its own ways. And the people are amazing. Many different people from around the globe. Actually, the most diverse city in the world is not Dubai. The most diverse city in the world is not New York, is not London, it's Toronto. So you see people from around the world, different cuisines, different restaurants. You would love it. So I really enjoyed it in Toronto and made many friends, had many students. Like I already had more than 100 students from around the globe, different countries, from Saudi Arabia to Japan to South Korea, to most of the South American countries. So it's been an amazing experience, just like making friends with all those people and stuff. So I guess I must have given you the answer. The reason why I left Iran was that, to just get to the core of your question, because the opportunities were so low down there. Year by year, the situation got deteriorating, like in terms of the economic circumstances, and like started different companies, they couldn't work, mostly because of the sanctions. To be honest with you, the only time that we worked somehow quite well compared to the rest of the times was after the nuclear deal. So when the nuclear deal was made, the business somehow got better in Iran. So more European companies got into Iran, they brought like some sort of more businesses, not in a way that anything got established or anything like meaningful got created, but still we could take a breath of a fresh air. I was so good for the Iranian private sector, and I was a part of the private sector, so it was good for me. It was better for me back then. But when Trump got into power in 2016, it just abolished the deal. Well, since then the situation started to get worse. Year by year by year, couldn't do any banking transaction, couldn't do any like meaningful businesses. Companies around the world wouldn't even want to do any like correspondence with us. And then it was the October 7th. and I was working for the Germans. And then they decided to leave the country. And then I was like, the moment I realized that it doesn't seem like to be going in the right direction, because things didn't seem to be working well, like every day getting worse and worse and worse. So I decided maybe it's a better idea to leave the country, to build something from scratch, even if it's so hard. Like, I mean, at the age of 40, you have to start something from the very beginning, not knowing the country, going somewhere else. Entirely new country, entirely new culture, have to learn about everything. It's not only about the language, it's about how to be dealing with things, how to learn how to do stuff like administrative stuff, driver's license, opening a bank account. It's not easy, but nevertheless, it seems like you have no other choice, because there was a deadlock. Americans wouldn't compromise, the Iranian government didn't seem to be want to compromise against Americans, so there was like this political deadlock that didn't allow anything like meaningfully flourish in terms of like the economic opportunities. So what was I supposed to do? I was the guy who had lived in Turkey, who had then gone to Germany for a year, who had been around. So when I got back to Iran in 2015, late 2015, I had high hopes. Things would get better, so I started my own company, a little consultancy company, and we were working so well. Started working with like bigger international consultancy firms like Deloitte here and there, doing trade fairs. I did a lot of trade fairs here in Turkey, bringing Iranian companies to Turkish trade fairs. That was even the thing that got worse year by year by year, because the Iranian companies were short of money. They didn't have enough cash, they didn't have any export prospects, so that business didn't go so well for us either. So it left me in a dire situation where I had to make hard decisions. What am I supposed to do? Let's just go seek something new, just to test your opportunities, see if you can like build something new. But I don't regret it. Enjoyed my time in Toronto, met so many new people, I told you, hang out a lot with Canadians. I learned a lot about the politics of the world, of like the people from different parts of the world. It was kind of like, I would tell you that it was enlightening for me to be there, to learn. And yeah, I'm grateful for the opportunity. As a whole, Canada has been so good to me. They've been kind, they've been generous. It was an absolutely net positive experience going to Canada in the last 18-19 months that I've been there. So I don't know if I answered your question here. Yeah, so I had lived in Europe for a while, so I was not unfamiliar with the Western culture, to be honest with you. But still, if I want to speak about the West, the European culture is different from North American cultures in many ways. I don't want to say which one's better or which one's worse, but I found the North American way of living easier to deal with than the European ones. So I found it somehow more receptive and it's more receptive. Canada is a country that's been built to be prepared to receive people from around the world. It's inherent to it. That's my Canadian experience. Of course, I don't know about the States, but that was the difference that I spotted there. If it answers the first question. Where do you stand on the political spectrum regarding the Islamic Republic? Do you define yourself as a supporter, a critic, or an opponent of the current system? I think the answer to this question is not very simple. I could be all of them at the same time, depending on the circumstances. When it comes to human rights issues, I'm an opponent. I'm against so many human rights issues that the Iranian regime has been accused of throughout all these years. So I want the system to be not to be toppled, but to be reformed in terms of the judiciary system that is not working efficiently and is not apparently working properly. And in many cases, I believe that does not treat people, I don't even know what is the word for it, but it is apparent that the political orientations may affect judiciary decisions in some cases. Like when it comes to political prisoners, they belong to some certain, how can I put it in words? They believe in like some certain aspect of the political spectrum rather than the other. So I don't think the power is distributed equally in Iran. The power is concentrated. That is a thing in Iran, and the political prisoners exist in Iran, which is a problem. There's been an ongoing activism going on inside Iran to fight against these issues, especially when it comes to human rights issues, especially when it comes to social rights, so on and so forth. And a lot of people have paid and have been paying the price for social and political advancement inside Iran. There's like many political prisoners, like activism inside Iran has been flourishing in many ways. And so I'm against these types of, let's say, policies that the Iranian regime has got towards its opponents. But nevertheless, when it comes to other issues like another country invading Iran, of course I would support my country. Then I would be unable to distinguish between the regime and the country and the state. For me, it's all together. So the analogy that I used the other time was like governments and the regimes are like your clothes and are like your dresses, and the country is like the body. So when someone shoots you, it may cause a hole or little hole in your clothes, but it will cause a big scar in your body, and that's your body that bleeds. So when there is a foreign invasion to your country, like automatically you become supporter of those who is like taking care and defending your land, because that's the fight of the land now. Like somebody is like intruding your land. So that's the difference. So I would become a supporter. But the critic, of course, a critic. I've always known myself as a critic. There are like so many issues that I'm critical of, which is fine, which is needed for society. Every good society needs to have good critics. And of course I'm a critic of the Iranian government, but like the majority of the Iranian people, I believe. So I believe that the majority of the Iranian public are against what is regime doing towards its people and have big questions about so many things that the regime has done throughout all these years, especially when it comes to the human rights and civil rights, as I told you. And yeah, so this is the reason why I say my level of support or criticism can vary along all the spectrum of aspects that one country has got. So I cannot put it easily, just like, okay, I'm just for the government or against the government. This is what they are trying to do to you. They want to push you toward one end of the spectrum, toward one end of the pole, to say you have to make your decisions either or. No, I don't see it as a dichotomy. I don't see it as an either or. There are like many different way of approaching one issue, because it is not like when it comes to the government, the way I see it is not like a one solid thing. It is like a complex of different attributes, like cultural attributes, political attributes, power grid system. And you know what I'm trying to say? It's like the government, being against or for the government, it's not that easy to make that decision. It's way bigger than that. There are like many aspects to it. It's not like one single thing. I say, okay, this glass of water, I'm against it. Okay, it's not like that. It's like a cloud of opinions and attributes and policies and embedded in people's background, cultural background, social background. So that's how I see it, really. I hope I have answered the question here. Yeah, so if I want to put it very short again, just to conclude it, if I have to choose between opponent and a critic and a supporter, I'd rather stay as a critic, which I think is fine. It is healthy, and every good country needs good critics for themselves to make sure that the checks and balances are in place from the public's perspective. In this sense, I know myself as a critic, and there are like so many different issues that I have a certain criticism for when it comes to Iranian affairs, from like the foreign policy of the Iranian government to the way they treat people, from the judiciary system, from like the election system, from like governance system, the corruption inside Iran, which is prevalent, one of our big problems. So of course I have got big criticism towards these kind of things. Next question, right?
Okay.
The world saw two very different reactions after the death of Khamenei. People mourning in the streets and the other filming themselves dancing in joy. In your view, which of these represent the real Iran, or is it the real Iran somewhere in between this grief and celebration? Iran is a population of 90 million people. Every different person has got their own reality, depending on their social background, what family they come from, what education they have had, what experiences they have had in their lives. So I would say the Iranian girl dancing in the streets of Toronto and LA is as real as the lady in Chador who's mourning the death of her supreme leader. And I don't necessarily associate myself with those who are dancing in the streets in Toronto. I was never a part of it. I didn't go to any of their protests, but I still try to understand where she's coming from. It's her anger, it's her sense of vengeance, hatred that she has developed all throughout all these years, and I think that's totally wrong to decide to make decisions, to make your political decisions based on anger and vengeance. But the bigger question that this makes me ask myself is what this government has done to these people, or what they think the government has done to these people to make them react like that to the death of the leader of their country. So that's the question I should ask myself first too. And I also believe that the Iranian government, the Iranian public is a short-term society. So they just keep forgetting things and they can get emotional and they can get dramatic. That is the reality of that society too. I'm not sure if the people who were dancing that loud and that were happy were necessarily that happy inside, but they were like reflecting on their anger and grief in a form of dancing. So I take it as a sort of a political reaction, or at least they take it as a sort of a political reaction to his death. Personally, I didn't get happy when I heard Khamenei died. I felt the void, and I started to get even more worried for the future of the country, because like it enters you into the realm of unknown. And I don't think the Iranian circumstances as a whole got better after his death. And I think the people who are his staunch supporters in Iran have got every right to mourn his passing too, because they are the Iranian public too. There is not one single individual representation of the Iranian public. I'm not necessarily a good single representation of the Iranian public either. You could say maybe a lot of my compatriots may not necessarily agree with me or may even hate the things that I say. They're like, no, he's like a leech or an apologist, a regime apologist or whatever. So by that I mean people have different realities, and not one single person can or group of people can represent the reality of the Iranian people. They can be very religious. They can be very religious, and on the other hand, they can also be quite laïc and in some cases anti-religious, which is also sad. There is something that I hear these days saying, I hear people here and there say, I'm an Iranian, I'm not Muslim. This is not true. I think what they'd rather say, what they'd better say if I were them, I'd say I'm an Iranian and I want the Islamic ruling, some negative aspects of Islamic ruling, let's put it this way, to be away from my constitution. So maybe that is a better definition of what they actually want. But when they say, I'm an Iranian, I'm not Muslim, it means that they don't know either Iran or Islam, because it has nothing to do with either of them, because people's understanding of Islam is different too. Like your understanding of Islam as someone who's sitting in Istanbul is different from someone in Indonesia or Egypt or Tunisia or Iran, and people's experiences have been different. And by saying I'm an Iranian, I'm not Muslim, it is twofold detrimental in a way that first it alienates those Iranians who know themselves as Muslim, and there's a huge portion of them who actually practice Islam, who do all the rituals, say their prayers 5 times a day. So you would alienate them from the beginning, which is wrong, which is like goes against like a national unity. And second of all, it will bolster the regime stance, saying that, yeah, look, these are the people who are infidels, who want to get our religion from ourselves, and they are the American leeches, and it really in many ways bolster the regime stance too. And it just doesn't help. I don't think it helps in any ways. But still, I try to understand their point of view too. They're just like so frustrated, overwhelmed throughout all these years, which might have had different reasons. Iranians. Some from the regime's policies, some from the social media manipulations here and there, the sanctions and the economic hardships that the Iranians have been going through, putting all the blame on the Iranian regime, and just because of the regime all the time associates itself with the Islamic ruling and has got this rhetoric, use this rhetoric as a source of legitimacy for their government. So Iranians inevitably associate all the shortcomings that they witness in their country with Islam too, which is very funny in a way that it is not necessarily relevant to the other. But that's how they have been presented all throughout these years. They've been told by the government that these people are the representation of Islam, and at the same time, these people were not efficient enough. They had a lot of shortcomings. So your natural conclusion is, okay, so this guy is saying that I'm Islam and he's not doing right, so maybe Islam is bad, so I'm not Muslim. So that is basically I say that is the conclusion that they make over here, which is like a very wrong and uneducated conclusion, to be honest with you. Because I've been with people around the world from different faiths, different religions, different parts of the world. As I told you, people can practice different religions and people are proud of who they are, just to do their rituals, just to follow their ancestral faith, which is beautiful in many ways. Like I was in India, I said some prayers with the Indians. I was in the Philippines, I said some prayers with the Filipinos over there. And of course, I have every single respect for my own religion too. It's all beautiful. So when someone says like, how are Muslims? Are like, I just remember my grandmother. She was a very nice woman. She was so kind. She sometimes smoked nargila. I remember that. She made tea for myself. She told me good stories. And she was a good Muslim. At least she knew herself as a Muslim, and she was so harmless. And she would take it as a disrespect if an Iranian would go to her and tell her that I'm an Iranian and I'm not Muslim, because she knew herself as a Muslim. So I think that is so wrong, and that's the rhetoric that's been promoted mostly from the diaspora side of the Iranians, and it's also been echoed by the Iranian people inside Iran too, and I think that's not really helpful. I think that is something that is hurting the Iranian society in many ways. I think I must have answered that question too. Yeah, so the question was like, some people were happy, some people were sad that Khamenei was killed. Where is the reality of the Iranian people? Yes, in a nutshell, Iranians have got different realities. What they have to learn is to respect the other's reality. I can understand the Iranians' angers, but there is no way to justify dancing right after his death. Just imagine, right 10 minutes after he was killed, there was the news that 167 children were killed in a primary school in south of Iran. So we were bound to mourning. We had to have the chance to go silent, to mourn their death, and to stay in the state of shock because of the invasion that had already happened against the Iranian soil. So I don't think it was a very good gesture from the Iranian people's side, especially in diaspora, to jump into the streets and start dancing. I mean, you need to have, what is the word for it in English? They say gravitas. You have to have that somberness to bear this pain, to understand what situation now you're starting to go through, to try to understand the pain of the mothers for those 167 children who were killed in that primary school. And that was horrible. So there's no way to justify it. I told you, I'm trying to understand why such a reaction happened the way it happened, but I don't support it in any ways. And I'm totally against it. And right after it happened, I went online and I criticized my friends some of my friends actually, older friends that had gathered in that meetings, like in those gatherings. I was shocked to see the Iranian diaspora cheering to it. I don't think that was right. What do you think about now apparent US strikes on Minab primary school? Do you find acceptable, like some Pahlavi supporters do? Absolutely not. I don't think it's acceptable in any ways to condone such an atrocity that happened in the daylight in the most blatant manner in the first 1 hour of the war. And according to the last findings, it has turned out that it was like a military mistake. They were apparently trying their new AI systems. These poor children fell victim to it. And what was painful to me was that the Iranians were trying to justify it. Some of the Iranians were trying to justify it, like it was close to a military garrison. Some were like, he even had the audacity to say that the Iranian army had bombed the school, which was so sad to hear. And yeah, it's absolutely unacceptable, and I was against it like the very first minute I heard it. And I was like, even if the Iranian government has mistakenly, because it hasn't, it was clear from the beginning that they had never done that. I mean, you would have to be crazy to bomb your own soil. What to do? Just to agitate people, to provoke people who are going to go through a war? I mean, this would be insanity, and like anyone who thinks that could have been the case is simply out of his mind, because it just doesn't simply make sense. And so I really condemn their behavior. Those people who thought that it is acceptable for children to be killed and called it a collateral damage, I think it was disgusting. Call it a collateral damage, because that's about people's lives. It's about like the children's lives. They were just like simply at school, and they had no stakes in anything. What really struck me was that it was a double tap, in a way that they had hit the school, and when the parents tried to go inside, when the firefighters tried to go and rescue people, they hit the second time 40 minutes after the first hit. She's like, this is an absolute crime against humanity, and I think it should be investigated as a war crime, and that's horrendous. It just shows the nature of the US Army and how brutal they can be. So absolutely unacceptable, I would tell you. Can someone oppose the Islamic Republic politically but still defend Iran against foreign attacks? Absolutely. I think that can absolutely be the case. You can be the critic of the government, you can have so many things to say against it, against the policies that they have had, about the way that they're governing the entire country. But to me, it comes very natural to want to defend your country, because it's about your soil, it's about your identity. I assume that it must have become obvious to those Iranians who were somehow supporting this invasion in the beginning by now, that the Americans and the Israelis do not have their interest in their mind, and the only thing that they're following is their own interest, which is apparently destroying Iran in its entirety, clearly attacking like wheat silos and like oil reservoirs and the Iranian infrastructure, and the military garrisons has nothing to do with human rights in Iran and the liberation of the Iranian people. So I think some portion of the Iranian public's been manipulated by some ways, by social media algorithm. I don't really know. Companies like Palantir, all these AI companies try to manufacture consent in the minds of the Iranians that this war is something good and it will liberate Iranians and it will bring peace and prosperity for the Iranians, which must be so naive of someone to believe that this could be the case. And yeah, I'm against it in its entirety. Yeah. I am against the attacks, and I am the critic of the government, so it can actually exist. What do I think about Mojtaba Khamenei? We haven't heard a lot about him in the public arena. He hasn't been a person who was very vocal or has any say in anything. All I know is that he hasn't had any administrative role or position, but he has been an influential figure in his father's office. So he must know the people in power, the decision makers so well. And if I were the Islamic Republic, I think I would have the same choice. He's the son, he's got the same family name, he's got the same connections. It helps the nostalgia to stay alive. It helps the system to continue, to sustain. And something that became apparent after the death of the supreme leader was that they used to say, that is the head of the octopus. If we just cut off the head of the octopus, the system will crumble into pieces, which didn't happen. So at this point, after the appointment of the new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, I don't think this role has got the same importance as we used to think it has before the death of the supreme leader. Because if it had had, the system would have been supposed to crumble, which didn't. So now automatically it means that the position does not bear the significance we used to think it bears. And this person, most critically, technically cannot have the same amount of power that his father had, because the circumstances have changed. The conditions have changed. The country is not the same country. The people are not the same people. The circle of the people around him are not even the same people. And something was proved, and I was vindicated for that the system is not about the supreme leader only. It's about a system that is in place. Like, for example, you go to KFC here and there. KFC is a franchise, right? There's a system of procedures and systems and contracts and administrative processes in place. It's not only that picture of that old man on top of the restaurant. That's just a trademark. So that's how I see the position of the supreme leader in Iran. Although, according to the Iranian constitution, a lot of power has been assigned to this position, but it does not necessarily mean that the system entirely belongs to its existence to be able to continue living. Because those who believed that it would happen were proven wrong. The supreme leader got killed, but the system kept operating. They conducted the attacks according to their schedule, and they seem to be still doing so. And I don't think that they would be willing or ready to surrender. I don't think it will happen. And within the last few days, where we heard from the American sources that there's been some talks of having boots on the ground. I don't think that's a very good idea, because the fighters in Iran have got the experience of like fighting in that region for 50 years now. They fought in Yemen, in Syria, in Iraq, and I don't think it will be very easy for the American troops to bring their people on the Iranian soil. That's how I see it. I don't see any indication of any sort of a crack in the system, but rather I would tell you that it may sound a bit counterintuitive, but rather this kind of attacks from outside have somehow bolstered the rhetoric inside the regime, and now it has somehow united them even more, because I would say this is something cultural too, right? It's about like people's beliefs and like religions and like religious beliefs and stuff like that. So when there's been an attack by an outsider, then like suddenly makes them even become more united. So even the people who were critics of the regime, now when they see this is happening to their country, I think it would be so natural for them to want to become I don't know, closer to those who may think that can bring them security, because it's now about the Iranians' national security and our infrastructure, our agency as a state. So these attacks, not only they didn't succeed in like dispersing people away from the regime, but also in many ways helped to bolster the regime stance, unite their supporters even more fiercely, and make people who were somehow more critics of the regime to become a supporter, because people fear for their future and they don't want their country to be gone. I think more and more people, as the war continues, are starting to understand that this is not going the way that they necessarily expected to. After bombing all the factories and all the residential areas, and airports like crippling the Iranians' daily life, I think now we're starting to show it's like the darker reality to more people. And despite what the Americans had in their mind, I think at the end of the day, this war will earn the Iranian regime more supporter, because people seek security and they would support who's like fighting for their security. Doesn't seem to be about the liberation. It was like a full-fledged invasion. They have bombed, if I'm not wrong, 16, 17 aircrafts in Mehrabad airport. Like the airport in Tehran is gone. Like the civilian aircraft, how is it going to bring us freedom or liberty in any ways? So I think this kind of incidents will be eye-opening for those Iranians who still think that this is a solution. American-Israeli invasion is a solution. There is a segment of the Iranian diaspora that strongly advocates for the return of for the Pahlavi era or the leadership of Reza Pahlavi. What is your perspective on this? Do you see the monarchy as a valid alternative for Iran's future? I see it from a few different perspectives. The Iranians who support Reza Pahlavi can be defined in three ways. First, I call them the traditional supporters who left Iran after the revolution. They are like I would say the first circle, the first traditional circle of people who still believe that Iran should go back to its glorious times. They have got a good view of today's Iranian public. They have got a lot of nostalgia, and that's one group of people. The other group is the Iranian diaspora who have left Iran throughout all these years, mostly quite early, like 30 years ago, 20 years ago, or some that have left Iran lately, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. All these people are different. They are not the same. And some people just say, they put their words, they support Pahlavi as a solution in a way that they say, now we have tried all these ways and none of them succeeded, now maybe he can free us. But the way I see it is that he's a scam. I don't see any future for him, and I don't think he'll ever go back to Iran, although at some point he might have thought that he could. But honestly, I think he's a puppet in the hand of Mossad, and he's been used, and he doesn't have any more application for them. I think his application was to create this consent for a military invasion against Iran, and he's done his job already, and there is no use for him now. Just like Trump said the other day that he's a nice guy, but he said he's a nice guy, but he doesn't see that he would be fit to run the country. He said he'd rather have someone from inside Iran. So this was a middle finger to his supporters and himself, who had thought that they would have any future in the leadership of Iran. This has created I call it a sort of a cult around him, which is not very productive, and I don't see everything that they do well-founded, and I don't see everything that they do necessarily sensible, and I don't think everything that they do necessarily very inclusive. So I see them as somehow sort of segregationist, and I don't think he's been helpful to the Iranian uprising for democracy in any ways. Not only he hasn't been helpful, but I think he has hurt the movement in many ways by his unnecessary interventions, by trying to hijack the Iranians' public uprising. And he's been supported by big powers because they have got TVs, they have got social media channels, they have got bots on social media, they have got inside the American administration who's supporting them. They also receive a lot of funds in different ways from the American government, and I think Americans use Reza Pahlavi as a stick on the head of the Islamic Republic just to punish them with him. But I don't think he himself has any agency, and he doesn't have the character or the charisma to lead a country like Iran with its all complexity, political wise, cultural wise, even religious wise. And there's been a nostalgia of Iran in 50 years ago in the mind of Iranians, which is not necessarily true. And I don't see any ways where monarchy will have a way and they come and like establish their power again in a country after 50 years of their basically escape from Iran. So according to one of the interviews that he himself had, he said, we brought $66 million in cash out of Iran. That's what he says. I don't know how much actually they had brought out of Iran, but still 50 years ago, this was a huge amount of money. So Iranians don't necessarily, like all of them, don't necessarily believe that these people are saint, and they have got serious questions about these people's background. But I also agree that there are some still not a huge, but a considerable portion of the Iranian public who believe that he is the right solution. I simply think that they are wrong, and I think they will come to the same conclusion as mine so soon, maybe in the next 2-3 months, because I told you the Iranian public is really short oriented, very short term. So I think that's just like a tidal wave that's come up, but it will go down soon in the next couple of months. I don't see any like political future for Reza Pahlavi, especially after his meltdown in the last couple of days when Donald Trump implied that maybe he's not Donald Trump's favorite choice for leading the future of Iran. So he rushed in front of the camera saying that, yeah, people, you shouldn't forget me. I was the guy whose name you were chanting in the street. I will still be your representative, although there hasn't been any sort of legal process that people would give him representation. But he's a self-acclaimed leader, and I think his meltdown has just started, and he won't have any, I don't think he will have any bright future in the Iranian politics. The recent military strikes by Israel seems to have changed your path. Why does a person who has chosen to live in the West feel the need to return and defend the state that they might have had serious disagreements with? We people around the world have all somehow been westernized in many ways. Our lifestyle, our way of thinking, the movies that we watch, the music that we listen to. So I enjoy living in the West. So many parts of my way of thinking, my cultural attributes are Western already without even wanting it. And the West is somewhere that you could have this clash of opinions with other people. You can learn a lot from the West. I don't have anything against the West. I love the West and all these achievements and their way of living. I've been westernized from the day that I was born, even being born in Iran. Many aspects of our lives is Western, right? Like the jeans that you're wearing is Western, right? Like everything around us is Western. This mobile phone is Western. This microphone is Western. Everything, podcast is a Western thing. So I haven't got anything against it. I actually love it. But wanting to go back to Iran, it's not a logical choice. It's an emotional choice, because I feel like I have to be with my parents. I have to be together with them to pass all these sad times and bitter times together. I think is the reason why I'm going there. Logically, I don't think that's the right decision to take. I don't think that's the right decision to make. But emotionally speaking, I feel the need to be back with my parents, with my family, with my friends, just to give them the sense and the word of comfort, tell them that I am with them when they were fearful, when they had no one beside them. I care about them and I care about the country, and if they are going through some tough times, I want to be with them. So in the future, I won't have anything to regret. I wouldn't tell myself I just left them behind for my own wants and needs. At least I wouldn't say to myself. I say, okay, I was there when I thought that I was needed. It just gives me better feelings. Yeah, I would like to thank our viewers. Thanks for, what should I say? I say Serbestiyet. So let me say it again. Thanks to Serbestiyet viewers, and bye-bye.